Stephen Marshall had everything money could buy: success, luxury, and power. But nothing could fill the emptiness in his heart. On a Sunday morning, during his usual run through the quiet streets of his exclusive neighborhood, he was stopped in his tracks by a simple statement from a little girl. "I know you. Your picture is in my dad's wallet." This unexpected encounter with young Lily led him to her father, Andrew, Stephen's estranged brother whom he hadn't seen in nearly a decade. What started as a curious encounter quickly turned into a powerful journey of reconciliation. Stephen was shocked to discover the hardships Andrew had faced, including raising Lily alone after the tragic loss of her mother. Through heartfelt conversations, old wounds were reopened, and past mistakes were confronted. But in the end, it was Lily's innocence and Stephen's newfound determination to reconnect that began to heal the rift between the brothers. As they spent more time together, sharing meals and memories, Stephen realized that true wealth wasn't in his vast fortune, but in the family he had nearly lost. The weekend they spent together brought laughter and warmth back into Stephen's life, filling his once-empty mansion with love and hope. The road to healing was just beginning, but Stephen was ready to walk it, hand in hand with his brother and niece. What started as a lonely run through the streets of Greenwoods became a journey toward redemption and the rediscovery of what truly matters in life: family, love, and the simple joy of being together. If you are not subscribed, I recommend you subscribe and activate the bell so you don't miss any videos. Before we dive into this story, please let me know in the comments where you're watching from. As the sun began to rise, casting a warm glow through the luxurious silk curtains of his opulent bedroom, Stephen Marshall stirred awake. It was another Sunday, another day to follow his well-worn routine. A solitary run through the serene, tree-lined avenues of Greenwoods, the exclusive neighborhood that symbolized his towering success. At 45, Stephen was the very definition of achievement. As the head of one of the nation's most influential tech companies, his wealth was measured in the millions. Yet today, like so many days before, a deep, unshakable void gnawed at his soul, a hollowness that all the riches in the world could not seem to fill. Despite his sprawling mansion, complete with 20 grand rooms and an Olympic-sized pool, Stephen's life felt overwhelmingly empty. The silence of the vast, echoing spaces only emphasized the isolation that had become his constant companion. Determined to escape the oppressive quiet, he laced up his expensive, cutting-edge running shoes and stepped outside, hoping the rhythmic pounding of his feet on the pavement might drown out the haunting thoughts that had become all too familiar. The streets were eerily quiet at that early hour, with only a few gardeners tending to the perfectly manicured lawns of neighboring estates. Stephen ran without direction, letting his feet guide him through both familiar and unfamiliar paths, his mind drifting between the nostalgic memories of what once was and the persistent worries of what his life had become. How had his life led to this point? He had amassed everything that money could buy, yet he had never felt so alone, so detached from the world around him. So lost in his thoughts, Stephen almost missed the faint sound of a child's voice, a voice that would soon shatter his carefully constructed world. "I know you. Your picture is in my daddy's wallet." Startled, Stephen came to a sudden stop, his heart racing, not just from the exertion but from the unexpected shock of hearing those words. He quickly scanned his surroundings, searching for the source of the voice, and there she was, a little girl, no more than 7 years old, with brown hair neatly braided and large, inquisitive eyes that seemed to see right through him. Her clothing was plain, a stark contrast to the luxury that surrounded them, suggesting a life far removed from the one he knew. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, Stephen crouched down to meet her gaze. "What's your name, sweetheart?" he asked, his voice softening as he offered her a gentle smile. "My name is Lily," the girl responded with an innocent smile of her own. "My dad has a picture of you in his wallet. He showed it to me." A cold shiver coursed through Stephen's body. Who could this child's father possibly be? Why would he carry a photograph of him? His mind raced as he struggled to piece together an explanation for this strange encounter. "What does your dad look like, Lily? Where is he right now?" Stephen inquired, trying to keep his growing anxiety at bay. "He's at home. We can go see him if you want," Lily said with casual confidence, reaching out to take Stephen's hand as if she had known him her whole life. Stephen hesitated, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind. It was Sunday morning, after all, and he didn't want to intrude on someone's private time. Yet, the curiosity burning inside him was too strong to ignore. Who was this man? And what connection did he have to Stephen? Unable to resist, Stephen nodded and allowed Lily to guide him through the neighborhood. As they walked, the grandeur of the mansion slowly faded away, replaced by more modest homes and, eventually, humble apartment buildings. With each step, the world around them grew less polished and more real, and Stephen found himself feeling strangely out of place in this new setting. Lily led him with unwavering determination, occasionally waving to neighbors who smiled warmly at the sight of her. Finally, they arrived at a small, well-kept home, where Lily knocked confidently on the worn door. Stephen's heart pounded in his chest, a mix of anticipation and dread swirling inside him as the door creaked open. Standing in the doorway was a thin man, his face weary and unshaven, his eyes clouded with the weight of the world. But as those eyes met Stephen's, recognition flashed between them like lightning. The air seemed to leave Stephen's lungs as he stared in disbelief, unable to comprehend what he was seeing. "Is it you?" Stephen managed to utter, his voice trembling with a cocktail of surprise, deep emotion, and a sharp pang of guilt. Tears welled up in the man's eyes as he took a tentative step forward. "Yes, it's me," he replied, his voice breaking under the strain of the moment. "It's me, Andrew." The name hung in the air like a ghost, bringing with it a flood of memories and emotions that Stephen had long tried to bury. Lily, sensing the tension in the room, innocently asked, "Dad, you know him, right? He's the man in the photo." Andrew, struggling to keep his emotions in check, replied softly, "Yes, Lily, he's my brother." The little girl looked from one man to the other, her young mind unable to grasp the depth of the moment. The weight of their past hung heavily in the air, a chasm of nearly a decade of silence and unresolved pain between them. "Lily, sweetheart, why don't you go play while I talk with him?" Andrew suggested, his voice wavering slightly as he tried to maintain his composure. With a nod, Lily turned and ran into the house, leaving the two brothers standing there, enveloped in a thick, almost suffocating silence. The years that had passed since their last meeting seemed to have created a vast, unbridgeable distance between them, one that neither was sure how to cross. "Come in, please," Andrew finally said, his voice almost a whisper as he opened the door wider. Stephen stepped into the modest home, a flood of memories crashing over him, each one threatening to drown him in a sea of regret. This unexpected reunion with his brother, once his closest companion, now felt like the beginning of a long, uncertain journey, one filled with challenges, painful truths, and the hope of redemption. The living room, though small, radiated warmth. The furniture was worn but meticulously clean, a reflection of Andrew's effort to maintain some semblance of normalcy for his daughter. As Stephen's eyes roamed the room, they landed on a series of family photos adorning the walls. One picture, in particular, caught his attention. Andrew, younger and happier, holding a newborn Lily. The image struck Stephen like a knife to the heart, a painful reminder of all the milestones he had missed in his brother's life. "Please have a seat," Andrew said, gesturing toward the well-worn sofa. "Would you like something to drink? I have some coffee." "Coffee sounds good. Thanks," Stephen responded, lowering himself onto the sofa with a mixture of discomfort and unease. As Andrew disappeared into the kitchen, Stephen couldn't help but notice how much his brother had changed. The once vibrant and carefree young man he remembered was now a shadow of his former self. There was a tiredness in Andrew's movements, a heaviness in his demeanor, as though the weight of the world had settled on his shoulders and refused to let go. When Andrew returned, he handed Stephen a steaming cup of coffee before sitting down across from him. For a moment, they simply stared at each other, the silence between them filled with years of unspoken words and unresolved emotions. "So, you have a daughter," Stephen finally said, breaking the awkward silence that had settled between them. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, Drop a 1 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Andrew nodded, a small, weary smile lifting the corners of his mouth. Yes, Lily. She's 7 now. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. She looks like you. Stephen observed a hint of a smile on his face. She has your eyes. And her mother's character, Andrew added, though his smile faded as quickly as it had appeared. Stephen hesitated, fearing the answer to the question he was about to ask. Her mother. Andrew's voice was barely audible as he replied, She left us 3 years ago, in a car accident. The words hit Stephen like a blow to the chest. How had his brother gone through such unimaginable pain? And he hadn't even known. The guilt washed over him, a crushing wave that threatened to pull him under. I'm so sorry, Andrew. I had no idea, Stephen said, his voice thick with remorse. Andrew looked at him, his eyes reflecting a mix of sorrow and bitterness. How could you have known? He replied, his tone tinged with regret. We haven't spoken in years. The silence that followed was almost unbearable, weighted down by the years of separation and the unspoken accusations that lingered between them. How have you been? Stephen asked, fully aware of how inadequate the question sounded given the circumstances. Andrew let out a bitter, humorless laugh. I've had better days, but we're managing Lily and I, he answered, his voice tinged with both resignation and determination. In that moment, Stephen realized just how much he had lost in their years apart. Moments he could never get back, memories he had missed, and a bond that had once been unbreakable but now felt fragile and distant. Stephen nodded silently, feeling the weight of unspoken words pressing down on him. He glanced around the small living room, taking in the signs of a modest but proud existence. The simplicity of the space, filled with warmth and care, stood in stark contrast to his opulent mansion, which, despite its grandeur, felt cold and empty, a hollow shell devoid of the life that surrounded him now. And you? Andrew asked, breaking the silence. From what I've heard, you've become quite the big shot. Stephen shifted uneasily in his seat, the success that had once been his pride now feeling oddly burdensome. Yes, well, the company has done well, he admitted, unsure how to reconcile his achievements with the humility of the moment. I'm happy for you, Andrew responded, and to Stephen's surprise, the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Andrew, Stephen started, grappling with the flood of emotions that threatened to spill over. An apology, a plea for forgiveness, an attempt to bridge the chasm that had formed between them. But before he could find the right words, Lily burst back into the room, clutching a piece of paper with childlike excitement. Dad, look what I made, she exclaimed, holding up a colorful drawing of 3 figures, 2 men and a little girl. It's beautiful, sweetheart, Andrew said, pulling his daughter into a warm embrace. Who are these people? It's us, Lily explained proudly. You, me, and Uncle Stephen. The 2 brothers exchanged a glance, both astonished at how effortlessly Lily had accepted Stephen into her world. It was as if the years of distance and silence between them didn't matter to her at all. Lily, dear, Andrew said gently, Uncle Stephen probably has to leave soon. He has a lot of important things to do. Stephen felt a sharp pang of realization as if cold water had been splashed on his face. It was true. His life was packed with meetings, deadlines, and decisions that once seemed all-important. But standing there, looking at his brother and niece, those responsibilities suddenly felt trivial. Actually, Stephen said, surprising even himself, I was thinking, how about we go out for breakfast? I know a great place nearby that serves the best pancakes. Lily's eyes lit up with excitement. Yes, please. Dad, can we go? Andrew hesitated, uncertainty flashing in his eyes. I don't know, Stephen. We don't want to impose on your time. It's no imposition, Stephen insisted, his voice firm with newfound resolve. I'd like to get to know my niece better and catch up with you. A tense silence filled the room as Andrew considered the offer. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he nodded slowly. All right, give us a few minutes to get ready. As Andrew and Lily left to change, Stephen remained in the living room, his eyes wandering to the photos that lined the walls. Each picture told a story: Andrew's graduation, his wedding, Lily as a baby, and each one reminded Stephen of all the moments he had missed. A wave of determination washed over him. He couldn't change the past, but perhaps he could still be a part of the future. When Andrew and Lily returned, dressed and ready to go, Stephen greeted them with a genuine smile. Together, they left the house, with Lily skipping between them, her cheerful chatter filling the morning air. For the first time in a long while, Stephen felt a spark of something he thought he had lost: hope. This breakfast would be more than just a meal. It would be the beginning of a journey toward healing, rediscovery, and maybe even the rekindling of the brotherly bond they had once shared. The restaurant Stephen had chosen was a cozy, family-run establishment, with wooden tables and the comforting scent of freshly brewed coffee wafting through the air. Lily's eyes widened in awe as they stepped inside, while Andrew seemed slightly out of place, clearly unaccustomed to dining in such establishments. They settled into a table by the window, with plates of steaming pancakes soon placed before them. The silence between the brothers was heavy, punctuated only by Lily's enthusiastic comments about the food. "So, Lily," Stephen began, eager to break the ice, "what do you like to do for fun?" "I love drawing," she replied brightly, "and playing soccer. Dad taught me." Stephen turned to his brother in surprise. "You still play soccer?" Andrew shrugged modestly. "Once in a while. It's something Lily and I do together on weekends." "I remember when we used to play in the backyard," Stephen said, a nostalgic smile tugging at his lips. "You were always better than me." "I still am," Andrew quipped, and for a fleeting moment, the tension between them eased, replaced by a shared memory. Lily looked up at them, her young mind filled with curiosity. "Dad, why didn't you ever tell me about Uncle Stephen before?" The innocent question landed like a bomb, shattering the brief moment of peace. Andrew stiffened, his expression darkening, while Stephen found himself staring down at his plate, unable to meet his brother's eyes. "It's complicated, honey," Andrew finally replied, his voice heavy with the weight of their shared past. "Sometimes, adults make mistakes and drift apart." The admission hung in the air, laden with the pain of lost years and the unspoken regrets that now lay between them. "But now we're here," Stephen interjected, his voice filled with a mixture of guilt and hopeful anticipation. "And I'd like, with your dad's blessing, for us to truly get to know each other better." Andrew looked at his brother for a long, contemplative moment before nodding slowly. "I suppose we could give it a try." With that tentative agreement, the tension in the air began to dissipate, and the rest of the breakfast passed in a more relaxed atmosphere. Lily, with her boundless energy and innocent joy, regaled them with stories about her school and friends. Stephen listened intently, marveling at his niece's vivacity and the simple happiness she exuded. When the meal was over, Stephen insisted on covering the bill, despite Andrew's polite protests. As they stepped out of the restaurant, the trio found themselves at a crossroads, unsure of what to do next. "Would you like to take a walk in the park?" Stephen suggested, glancing at the nearby greenery. Lily's eyes lit up with excitement, and Andrew, catching his daughter's enthusiasm, nodded in agreement. Together, they strolled through the park, with Lily darting ahead to explore. Meanwhile, Stephen and Andrew walked side by side, the silence between them filled with the weight of unspoken words and unasked questions. Finally, Stephen mustered the courage to address the elephant in the room. "Andrew," he began, his voice soft but earnest, "I know it's been years and things between us ended badly, but I want you to know that I'm sorry. I'm deeply sorry I wasn't there for you, especially after what happened to your wife." Andrew kept his gaze fixed on the path ahead, his expression unreadable. "It wasn't just your fault, Stephen. I made plenty of mistakes too. My gambling addiction, I destroyed a lot of things. Even so," Stephen persisted, his voice thick with emotion, "I should have been there. You're my brother." They stopped at a park bench, watching Lily as she played with other children on a nearby swing set. "How did you overcome it?" Stephen asked after a pause. The addiction, Andrew sighed deeply, the memories weighing on him. It wasn't easy. I hit rock bottom more times than I can count. But when Maria got pregnant, I knew I had to change. For her, for the baby. I joined a support group, got help, and when Lily was born, I knew I couldn't go back to that life. Stephen nodded, a surge of admiration and regret coursing through him. You did it on your own. I should have been there to support you. I wasn't completely alone, Andrew admitted. Maria's parents were a huge help, especially after the accident. Without them, I don't know what would have become of Lily and me. I'm glad you had that support, Stephen said sincerely. Andrew, I know it's a lot to ask, but do you think we could try to rebuild our relationship? I want to be part of your life, part of Lily's life, if you'll let me. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 2 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Andrew remained silent for a moment, his eyes focused on Lily as she laughed and played on the swings. It won't be easy, Stephen. A lot has happened, and we've both changed. I know, Stephen nodded, his voice steady, but I'm willing to try to do whatever it takes. Why now? Andrew asked, turning to face his brother. What's changed? Stephen took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I'm not entirely sure. Maybe it was seeing Lily, realizing everything I've missed. Or maybe it's that I finally understood that all the success and money in the world mean nothing if you're alone. Andrew nodded slowly as if he understood perfectly. I can't promise anything, he said finally. But we can try for Lily if not for ourselves. A lump formed in Stephen's throat, but he managed a grateful smile. Thank you, Andrew. I won't let you down this time. At that moment, Lily came running towards them, her cheeks flushed from the excitement of playing. Dad, Uncle Stephen, did you see how high I was swinging? We did, sweetheart, Andrew replied, pulling his daughter into a warm hug. You were flying. Uncle Stephen, Lily said, turning to him with wide, eager eyes. Will you come visit us again? Stephen glanced at Andrew, silently asking for his brother's approval. When Andrew nodded slightly, Stephen's heart swelled with joy. I'd love to, Lily. If your dad agrees, I'd like to see you both again soon. Yes, Lily exclaimed, bouncing with excitement. Can we go to your house next time, Uncle? Do you have a pool? I've always wanted to swim in a pool. Stephen chuckled softly. Yes, I have a pool, and I'd love for you to use it. As they walked back to Andrew's house, Stephen felt a profound change stirring within him. The emptiness that had plagued him for so long was beginning to fill with the warmth of a family he had nearly lost. When it came time to say goodbye, Stephen hugged Lily tightly, then hesitated for a moment before embracing Andrew. The hug was brief and a bit awkward, but it was filled with unspoken promises and the hope of a new beginning. I'll call you this week, Stephen said as they parted. Maybe we can arrange that visit to the pool. Andrew nodded. We'd like that. As Stephen walked away, occasionally turning to wave at Lily, who waved back with boundless enthusiasm, he felt as though he was leaving behind the lonely, hollow man he had been that morning. The path to reconciliation and redemption would be long and challenging, but for the first time in years, Stephen Marshall felt a flicker of hope. Back in the quiet solitude of his sprawling mansion, Stephen found himself gazing at the vast, empty rooms with a newfound perspective. What once stood as towering symbols of his success now appeared hollow, mere spaces begging to be filled with laughter, love, and the warmth of family. A pang of nostalgia gripped him, leading him to his study where he unearthed an old photo album buried in the back of a drawer. As he flipped through the faded pages, memories of his childhood with Andrew came rushing back. Carefree summers spent playing in their parents' garden, silly squabbles that always dissolved into laughter, and the earnest promises they made to always stand by each other. When had they lost that bond? At what point had the pursuit of wealth and success overshadowed the irreplaceable treasure of family? Stephen closed the album, a sense of determination settling over him. He knew he couldn't rewrite the past, but he was resolved to shape a better future. A future where his brother and niece played a central role. With a deep breath, he picked up his phone, hesitating for just a moment before dialing a number that had long gone unused. "Mom, it's me, Steven. Yes, I'm okay. Listen, there's something I need to talk to you about." The days that followed were a whirlwind of emotions and meticulous preparations for Steven. That phone call to his mother had opened the floodgates to a deep and heartfelt conversation, one that traversed the winding paths of their shared past and cautiously explored the possibilities of the future. Buoyed by that exchange, Steven threw himself into getting his home ready for Andrew and Lily's upcoming visit. By Friday afternoon, Steven stood nervously at the entrance of his mansion, his heart pounding in anticipation. He had gone to great lengths to ensure everything was perfect. A cleaning crew had left the place spotless, and the fridge was stocked with snacks and treats he thought Lily would love. When the taxi finally pulled up in front of the grand house, Steven felt a surge of anxiety mixed with excitement. Lily was the first to step out, her eyes growing wide with awe as she took in the sheer size of the mansion. "Wow!" she exclaimed, her voice filled with wonder. "It's like a castle." Andrew followed, looking slightly uncomfortable in his casual attire, as if he felt out of place in such opulence. Steven noticed the subtle efforts his brother had made, shaving, tidying up, small gestures that spoke volumes. "Welcome," Steven said, trying to keep his tone light despite the nervousness fluttering in his chest. "I'm really glad you both could come. Thanks for inviting us," Andrew replied, his voice tinged with politeness and a hint of unease. Lily, oblivious to the undercurrent of tension between the two men, tugged at Steven's hand eagerly. "Uncle Steven, where's the pool? Can we go swimming now?" Steven chuckled, grateful for his niece's infectious enthusiasm. "Of course, Lily. But how about I show you around the house first?" As they moved through the grand halls and expansive rooms, Steven couldn't help but notice the mix of emotions playing across Andrew's face. Amazement tempered with a quiet sadness. It was as if the grandeur of the place highlighted the distance that had grown between them over the years. Lily, on the other hand, was captivated by everything, especially the state-of-the-art home theater and the enormous kitchen. "I've never seen a house this big," Andrew remarked quietly when they finally reached Steven's study. "Sometimes it feels too big," Steven admitted, his voice softening with a touch of vulnerability, "especially when you're alone." A brief, awkward silence settled between them, but once again, Lily's boundless excitement saved the moment. "The pool, Uncle Steven. Can we go now?" "Of course," Steven smiled warmly. "Why don't you go get changed? I'll show you where the changing rooms are." As Lily and Andrew went to change into their swimsuits, Steven seized the moment to make a quick call to his assistant, canceling an important meeting he had scheduled for that afternoon. For the first time in years, he realized that work could wait. When Steven stepped out to the pool area, he was greeted by a sight that filled his heart with a rare, tender warmth. Lily was already in the water, her laughter ringing out as she splashed around joyfully. Andrew stood at the edge of the pool, a genuine smile lighting up his face as he watched his daughter play. "Come on, Uncle Steven," Lily called out with infectious enthusiasm. "The water's perfect." And as Steven joined them, he felt a profound sense of fulfillment, a feeling he hadn't known in a long time. In that moment, surrounded by the sounds of laughter and the simple joy of being together, Steven knew that he was no longer alone. Without a moment's hesitation, Steven tossed aside his shirt and dove into the pool, joining Lily in her playful splashes. It wasn't long before Andrew, too, surrendered to the joyful moment, and together, they frolicked in the water, the years of distance between them seemingly evaporating in the golden light of the setting sun. As the sky gradually transformed into a canvas of soft pinks and gold, the three of them swam and played until the last light of day began to fade. Climbing out of the pool, their bodies tired but their spirits high, Steven handed them soft, warm towels. "Are you hungry?" he asked, a hopeful smile on his face. "I was thinking we could have a barbecue in the yard." "Yes, please." Lily's voice bubbled with excitement. "Can I help?" "Of course," Steven responded, his smile widening. "I could use all the help I can get. Cooking isn't exactly my strong suit." As they gathered in the yard to prepare the food, everything seemed to fall into place naturally. Lily chattered away about her school, her friends, and her favorite hobbies, her joy lighting up the evening. Andrew occasionally chimed in, and Stephen realized how much he cherished these simple, everyday conversations, something he had been missing for far too long. Later, as they sat around the patio table, the night sky stretched above them like a blanket adorned with stars, and the aroma of freshly grilled food lingered in the air. Stephen felt a profound sense of contentment wash over him. For the first time in ages, he felt like he was truly home. "This is nice," Andrew said softly, as Lily eagerly devoured her burger. "Thank you, Stephen." Stephen shook his head, his voice filled with emotion. "There's nothing to thank. I've missed this. I've missed us." Andrew nodded, a fleeting sadness crossing his features. "Me too." A peaceful silence settled over them, punctuated only by the gentle sounds of the night and Lily's occasional exclamations about how delicious the food was. "Andrew," Stephen began tentatively, gathering the courage to say what had been weighing on his heart. "I know it's early, and we have a lot of ground to cover, but I want to be a part of your lives, be there. Not just the occasional visit, but someone you can count on, for you and Lily." Andrew studied his brother for a long moment as if trying to gauge the depth of his sincerity. "Are you sure? Your life is so different from ours. Stephen, I don't want you to feel like you have to do this out of some sense of obligation." "I don't feel obligated," Stephen quickly interjected. "For the first time in a long while, I feel complete." Lily, who had been following the conversation with wide-eyed curiosity, couldn't contain herself any longer. "Does that mean we can come more often, Dad? Can I swim in the pool again?" Andrew glanced at his daughter, then back at his brother, a small smile tugging at the corners of his lips. "I suppose so, sweetheart, if your uncle agrees." "More than agree," Stephen responded, a wave of emotion washing over him. "I was thinking, why not stay the whole weekend? There are plenty of rooms here, and we could plan more things to do together." Lily leaped from her seat with excitement, and after a brief pause, Andrew nodded. "All right, we'll stay." That night, as Stephen lay in bed, he could hear the soft, joyful laughter of Andrew and Lily echoing from down the hall. The once empty mansion was now filled with life, love, and the comforting sound of family. It struck Stephen that this place was no longer just a grand house. It was becoming a home, a sanctuary where warmth and connection could flourish. Before drifting off to sleep, Stephen made a silent vow. He would do whatever it took to nurture this fragile reconnection, to be the brother and uncle that Andrew and Lily deserved. The road to healing old wounds and rebuilding their bond would be long, but he was ready to take it one step at a time. With the distant sound of their laughter soothing him, Stephen closed his eyes, dreaming of a future that was now rich with possibilities. The weekend passed in a blur of joyful activities. They visited the local zoo, where Lily marveled at the animals, watched movies in the home theater, and even played a spirited game of soccer in the sprawling yard. To Stephen's surprise, these simple, everyday moments brought him more joy than any of the lavish parties or high-profile business meetings that had once filled his life. As Sunday afternoon arrived and Stephen helped Andrew and Lily gather their belongings, he couldn't shake the sadness creeping into his heart. The thought of the house returning to its former emptiness, void of the laughter and warmth that had filled it over the weekend, weighed heavily on him. "This weekend has been wonderful," Stephen said, striving to keep his tone upbeat. "I hope we can do it again soon." Andrew nodded, a faint but sincere smile playing on his lips. "It has been surprisingly pleasant." "Thank you, Stephen." Lily, her small hands busy packing her colorful drawings into a backpack, looked up with her bright, eager eyes. "Uncle Stephen, can we come back next weekend?" Stephen chuckled softly, his heart warming at her enthusiasm. "I'd love that, Lily, but I think it's up to your dad." Both turned their expectant gazes to Andrew, who paused to consider the request. "Well, we can't come every weekend," he said thoughtfully, "but maybe once a month." Stephen's face brightened at the suggestion. "That would be perfect. And maybe I could visit you too?" I'd like to see where you live, to be part of your daily life. Andrew looked a little surprised by the offer but eventually nodded. Sure, that would be nice. As they stood by the door, ready to say their goodbyes, Stephen knelt to embrace Lily. Thank you for coming, little one. You've brought so much joy to this house. Lily hugged him tightly, her small arms warm and full of affection. Thank you, Uncle Stephen. I had so much fun. Then Stephen turned to Andrew. There was a brief hesitation, but when they hugged, it was warmer and less awkward than their embrace the previous week, hinting at the mending of their fractured relationship. Take care, Andrew, Stephen said softly, and please call me if you need anything at all. Andrew nodded, emotion flickering in his eyes. I will. Thank you, brother. As Stephen watched the taxi pull away, carrying his brother and niece back to their lives, he felt a bittersweet mix of sadness and hope. Yes, the house would feel emptier without them, but it was also full of new possibilities, a future where family bonds could be rebuilt and strengthened. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 3 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. In the weeks that followed, Stephen found himself rethinking his priorities. He began delegating more tasks at work, making sure his weekends were free, and even started leaving the office earlier during the week, something that did not go unnoticed by his employees. On Wednesday afternoon, after a quick phone call to ensure it was a good time, Stephen found himself driving to Andrew's neighborhood. As he parked in front of the modest house, nerves and excitement battled within him. Lily was the first to greet him, sprinting toward him with open arms. Uncle Stephen, you came? Stephen scooped her up, laughing. Of course I came. I promised, didn't I? Andrew appeared in the doorway, his smile genuine though tinged with fatigue. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. As they stepped inside, Stephen's eyes took in the details of the small but cozy living room, filled with photos and Lily's art. The kitchen, though modest, was alive with the rich, comforting smell of a homemade stew. I hope you like stew, Andrew said, sounding a bit embarrassed. It's nothing fancy, but it smells wonderful, Stephen interrupted earnestly. Better than any fancy restaurant. During dinner, Stephen listened as Lily animatedly recounted her day at school, and Andrew shared bits about his work. The warmth, love, and simplicity of their home struck Stephen deeply. It was a stark contrast to the grandeur of his mansion, which suddenly seemed colder and more lifeless than ever. Later, as Lily worked on her homework, Stephen and Andrew retreated to the small backyard, each with a cup of coffee in hand. Andrew, Stephen began cautiously, I've been thinking, I'd like to help you out. Financially, I mean. Andrew tensed visibly. Stephen, it's not necessary. We're managing fine. I know, Stephen replied quickly, and I don't want to offend you. It's just, I have more money than I'll ever need, and I'd like to use it for something meaningful. Maybe for Lily's education, or even to help you move to a bigger place, if that's what you want. Andrew sat in silence for a moment, staring at his coffee. I appreciate the offer, Stephen, really, but I don't want our relationship to revolve around money. I made that mistake once before with gambling. Stephen nodded, understanding dawning on him. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to imply anything. I just want to help, to be part of your lives. And you are, Andrew said, meeting his brother's gaze. We don't need your money, Stephen. Just your presence, your time. That's worth more to us than any amount of money. Stephen felt a lump forming in his throat. Thank you, Andrew. That means more to me than you know. As they sat in the quiet of the evening, the distant sound of Lily's humming filling the air, Stephen realized that he was finally starting to understand what truly mattered in life. And it wasn't his wealth or success, but the relationships he had neglected for far too long. The next morning, as the first rays of dawn painted the sky with soft hues of gold, Stephen felt a sense of purpose that had eluded him for years. Today was different. He wasn't heading into the office to close another deal or attend another high-stakes meeting. Instead, he was on his way to make a real difference, to contribute to something that truly mattered. Arriving at Andrew's house, Stephen caught sight of Lily as she dashed toward him, her small arms wrapping around his legs in a warm embrace. "Uncle Stephen, you're here." Stephen lifted her, laughing. "Of course I'm here. I wouldn't miss it for the world." Andrew emerged from the house, holding a steaming cup of coffee. "Good morning," he greeted, his tone lighter than usual. "Are you ready to see the community center?" "More than ready," Stephen replied with enthusiasm. "I did a little research last night. It seems the center has been struggling for quite some time." Andrew nodded, his expression somber as they walked to Stephen's car. "Yeah, it's sad. The center used to be the heart of the neighborhood, but now they're barely managing to keep the doors open." The drive through the neighborhood was a stark reminder of the changes time had wrought. When they arrived at the community center, the building's worn facade and cracked windows reflected years of neglect. But Stephen could see beyond the decay to the potential that lay underneath. They were welcomed by Elena, the center's director, a woman whose warm smile did little to hide the exhaustion in her eyes. "Andrew, it's so good to see you," she said warmly before turning to Stephen with a curious gaze. "And who might this be?" "Elena, this is my brother Stephen," Andrew introduced. "He's here to help the center." Elena's eyes brightened with hope. "Really? That's wonderful. We've been in dire need of help." As Elena led them on a tour of the facility, Stephen's mind raced with ideas. The roof was in desperate need of repair, the electrical system was outdated, and much of the equipment was either broken or obsolete. Despite these challenges, the center still pulsed with the remnants of its former vitality, a place where people once gathered to learn, grow, and connect. "What programs are you still able to offer?" Stephen asked, taking in the state of disrepair. Elena sighed, the weight of her burden evident in her voice. "We used to have so many art classes, after-school tutoring, a book club for seniors. But with all the budget cuts, we're barely able to keep the after-school program running." Stephen nodded, his mind already piecing together a plan. "What if we not only restored those programs but also expanded them? We could add computer classes, a small gym for the community, make this place a hub of activity again." Elena and Andrew exchanged glances, their expressions a mix of hope and cautious optimism. "That would be incredible," Elena said, her voice trembling with emotion. "But how?" Stephen smiled, feeling a rush of excitement. "I have some contacts who might be interested in getting involved, perhaps through a corporate social responsibility project. I'm also willing to make a substantial personal donation. But more importantly, I want to roll up my sleeves and help organize, recruit volunteers, whatever it takes." Andrew looked at his brother with newfound respect, pride shining in his eyes. "Count me in too. I can help with the repairs, and I know many in the neighborhood who would be willing to lend a hand." Elena's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "I don't even know how to thank you. This could change everything." Stephen extended his hand with a determined smile. "Then let's get started." That day marked the beginning of a transformation, not just for the community center, but for Stephen as well. For the first time in years, he felt that his life had true meaning, that he was part of something larger than himself. As he drove home that evening, he no longer saw his mansion as a refuge from the world, but as a place that was incomplete without the love and laughter he had found in his brother's home. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 4 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. The future, once a vast expanse of loneliness, now seemed brimming with possibilities. And for Stephen, tomorrow couldn't come soon enough. The days and weeks that followed were a flurry of relentless effort and newfound purpose. Stephen, leveraging his vast network of business contacts, successfully secured generous donations from local companies. Meanwhile, Andrew rallied volunteers from the neighborhood, organizing teams to tackle the much-needed repairs. The sight of Stephen, once the epitome of a corporate magnate, now fully immersed in the physical labor of painting walls and fixing furniture, was both surprising and inspiring. He found unexpected satisfaction in these simple tasks, side by side with the community residents. Afternoons were dedicated to meetings with Elena and a committed group of volunteers, meticulously planning the new programs and strategizing their implementation. Lily became a regular presence at the center, her enthusiasm infectious as she eagerly contributed to the efforts. Stephen watched with swelling pride as his niece organized books in the library and helped younger children with their homework, her youthful energy breathing life into the revitalized space. One Saturday, after a particularly exhausting morning of painting a classroom, Stephen and Andrew took a break, wiping sweat from their brows. Andrew glanced at his brother, a genuine smile spreading across his face. "You know, I never imagined I'd see you like this," he remarked. "Like what?" Stephen asked, a playful smudge of paint still on his cheek. "Happy," Andrew replied simply. "Genuinely happy." Stephen paused, the words sinking in. He looked around at the bustling activity of the center, the laughter of children, and the camaraderie of the volunteers. "You're right," he admitted after a moment. "I haven't felt this kind of happiness in a long time. This is where I belong." Andrew nodded, placing a comforting hand on Stephen's shoulder. "I'm proud of you, Stephen. You've changed so much." Stephen felt a surge of emotion welling up in his chest. "Thanks, Andrew. But I couldn't have done it without you and Lily. You've both reminded me of what matters in life." The two brothers shared a quiet moment, the sounds of laughter and hard work filling the air, a testament to the transformation they had both undergone. Months of tireless work and dedication culminated in the grand reopening of the community center. The building, once neglected and forlorn, now shone with fresh paint, clean windows, and a renewed sense of purpose. Vibrant banners fluttered in the breeze, announcing the center's new programs, as an eager crowd gathered for the inauguration ceremony. Stephen, Andrew, and Lily stood proudly beside Elena, all donned in matching community center t-shirts. As Elena delivered an emotional speech of gratitude, Stephen scanned the crowd, marveling at the diverse faces. Families reuniting, seniors engaging in lively conversation, and children running about with boundless enthusiasm. In the eyes of the community, he saw a spark of hope, a revived spirit that had once been lost. When it was Stephen's turn to speak, he approached the microphone with a humble heart. "I'm not standing here as a benefactor or a savior," he began, his voice steady. "I'm here as a member of this community. This center is proof of what we can achieve when we come together, when we care for one another. It has taught me more than I ever imagined, showing me that true wealth isn't measured by what's in the bank, but by the connections we make and the lives we touch." He turned to Andrew and Lily, their smiles reflecting the pride he felt. "My family led me to this place, and all of you have become my extended family. Thank you for welcoming me into something so meaningful." As the crowd erupted in applause, Stephen's heart swelled with a joy he had never known. This was more than just the culmination of a project. It was the beginning of a new chapter in his life, one filled with purpose, connection, and love. In the months that followed the reopening, Stephen's commitment to the community only deepened. The foundation he had started continued to grow, opening new community centers, launching educational and job training programs, and making a tangible difference in the lives of those in underserved areas. Andrew, now the foundation's operations director, was instrumental in ensuring that each project was carried out with care and efficiency. His first-hand experience and deep ties to the community were invaluable assets to the foundation's ongoing success. Lily, inspired by the positive change she witnessed within her family and community, decided to pursue a career in social work. After graduating from college, she joined the foundation, infusing it with fresh ideas and youthful energy, determined to carry forward the legacy of giving back. One afternoon, while overseeing the construction of a new center in another part of town, Andrew looked at his brother with a mix of pride and wonder. "You know, I never thought I'd say this, but I think you've found your true calling," he said, his voice filled with admiration. Stephen smiled, watching the volunteers work with enthusiasm and dedication. "A year ago, I would never have believed it," he responded thoughtfully. "It's incredible how life can change when you finally open yourself up to what matters." As they stood there, side by side, Stephen knew that this was just the beginning of something far greater than himself. A life of purpose, connection, and lasting impact. And they both nodded with warm smiles, encouraging him to share the story once more. "All right, sweetheart," Stephen began, his voice soft and filled with nostalgia. "It all started on a quiet Sunday morning, just like today. I was out for a run, lost in my thoughts when suddenly, a little girl stopped me in my tracks with a few simple words that would change everything." As Stephen recounted the tale, his voice carried the weight of the years that had passed and the profound impact of that moment. He spoke of how Lily had innocently revealed the photo in her father's wallet, how that encounter had led him to reconnect with his brother Andrew, and how it had opened his eyes to the emptiness that all his wealth could never fill. He described the journey of reconciliation, the unexpected bond that formed between the brothers, and the love that blossomed with Elena. A love that grew stronger with each passing day as they worked side by side, transforming lives through the foundation. As he spoke, Lucy listened intently, her eyes wide with wonder, even though she knew the story by heart. It was a story of love, redemption, and the power of family. A story that had become the cornerstone of who she was and the life her family had built. When Stephen finished, Lucy hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Grandpa. I never get tired of hearing it." "You're welcome, my dear," Stephen replied, his heart full. "But you know, the story doesn't end there. It continues with you and all the good you will do in the world." Lucy looked up at him, her young face serious. "I want to be just like you and Grandma Elena and Mom and Dad. I want to help people and make the world a better place." Stephen's eyes glistened with tears of pride as he kissed her on the forehead. "You already are, Lucy, and I know you'll do amazing things." Elena leaned over, placing a gentle hand on Stephen's shoulder. "She's right, you know. You've built something truly special, Stephen. Not just the foundation, but this family, this legacy of love and compassion." Andrew, who had been quietly listening, added, "And it all started with a little girl's curiosity and a photo in a wallet. Life is funny that way, isn't it?" The three adults shared a quiet moment, reflecting on the twists and turns that had brought them to this point. The years had been kind to them, not in the absence of challenges, but in the richness of the lives they had built together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm, golden glow over the garden, Stephen felt a deep sense of contentment. The future had once seemed bleak and uncertain, but now it was filled with the laughter of children, the love of family, and the satisfaction of a life well lived. Lucy wriggled out of Stephen's lap and ran back to join her friends, her laughter mingling with theirs in the evening air. Stephen watched her go, his heart swelling with gratitude for the life he had been given. A life that had been transformed by love, family, and the simple yet profound realization that true wealth was found not in what you have, but in who you share it with. As the evening settled in and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, Stephen, Elena, and Andrew sat together on the porch, sipping lemonade and enjoying the peacefulness of the moment. They had come a long way, and the journey had been anything but easy, but sitting there, surrounded by the love of family and the fruits of their labor, they knew it had all been worth it. And so, as the night deepened, they continued to share stories and memories, knowing that their legacy would live on, not just in the walls of the community centers they had built, but in the hearts of the next generation who would carry the torch forward, just as they had done. Elena squeezed Stephen's hand, her eyes reflecting the warmth and love that had grown between them over the years. "You've come a long way, Stephen. We all have." Stephen nodded, his heart overflowing with emotions that words could barely capture. "It's hard to believe how much has changed. I never imagined that a chance encounter with a little girl would lead to all this. This life, this family, this legacy." Lily leaned in, her smile radiant. "That little girl changed all our lives, Uncle Stephen. You taught us that true wealth isn't about what you accumulate, but what you give back." Stephen looked around at his family, at Lucy, who had returned to playing with her friends, at Lily and Michael, whose partnership had blossomed into a beautiful marriage, and at Andrew, who had become not just a brother but a true friend. His eyes settled on Elena, his constant companion, who had shared in every joy and every sorrow. "I'm proud of what we've built together," Stephen said, his voice thick with emotion. "It wasn't just about finding happiness for myself. It was about creating a space where others could find happiness too." Elena kissed his cheek, her voice soft and full of love. "And you did, Stephen. You turned your life around. And in doing so, you touched countless others." As the evening drew to a close, the family gathered around the table for dinner, the laughter and conversation flowing as naturally as the bonds between them. They shared memories of the past, dreams for the future, and the simple, profound joy of being together. As they sat down to eat, the sun finally dipped below the horizon, leaving behind a sky dotted with stars. Stephen looked up, feeling a deep connection to the universe, a sense of fulfillment that he had never known in his younger years. "I used to think success was about reaching the top," he said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of his journey. "But now I know that true success is about who's there with you when you get there." Andrew raised his glass, a twinkle in his eye. "To family, to love, and to making a difference." The others raised their glasses, echoing the toast. To family, to love, and to making a difference. As they clinked glasses, Stephen felt a profound sense of completion. His life had come full circle, and he was exactly where he was meant to be, surrounded by the people he loved, in a life filled with purpose and meaning. And as the night wore on, with the sounds of laughter and the scent of good food filling the air, Stephen knew that this was his legacy. A legacy of love, of giving, and of living life to its fullest. And he couldn't ask for anything more. As the gentle breeze wove its way through the garden, it felt as though the universe was conspiring to etch this moment into eternity. The sweet scent of blooming flowers mingled with the harmonious sound of children's laughter, creating a tapestry of life that seemed almost too perfect to be real. Stephen closed his eyes, allowing the sensations to wash over him, grounding himself in the here and now, a moment that encapsulated everything he had yearned for, yet never knew he needed. His mind wandered back to the man he had once been, a man consumed by ambition, isolated by the very wealth he thought would bring him happiness. He had been at the pinnacle of success, revered and feared in equal measure, yet the emptiness within him had only grown. He had walked through life surrounded by luxury, but the silence of his sprawling mansion had been a constant reminder of his solitude. It was a life marked by achievements, but devoid of the deeper connections that give those achievements meaning. But then came that fateful day, a day that seemed ordinary at first, a routine morning run through his exclusive neighborhood, when a small voice cut through the fog of his thoughts. "I know you. Your picture is in my dad's wallet." Those innocent words, spoken by a little girl named Lily, had ignited a spark within him, one that would grow into a flame of transformation. That chance encounter had been the first step on a long journey back to the one thing he had lost in his pursuit of success: his family. As he stood on the porch, the memories of that day flowed through him like a river. He remembered the shock that had coursed through him when he first heard Lily's words, the curiosity that had driven him to follow her, and the emotions that had overwhelmed him when he reunited with his estranged brother, Andrew. It had been a moment of revelation, one that had shattered the illusions he had built around himself and laid bare the truth he had been avoiding for years. The life he had constructed with brick and mortar was nothing compared to the life he could build with love and connection. Stephen thought of Lily, the little girl who had unknowingly changed the course of his life. Her simple, childlike faith in the goodness of the world had rekindled something deep within him, an ember of hope that had long been buried beneath layers of cynicism and regret. She had been the catalyst, the spark that set off a chain of events leading him back to his brother, and ultimately to himself. It was through Lily that he had come to understand the profound truth that had eluded him for so long. That true wealth was not measured in dollars or material possessions, but in the richness of the relationships we cultivate and the love we share. If you're still tuned into this video and find the story inspiring, drop a 5 in the comments to let me know you're still with me. Now, 20 years later, as he gazed at his granddaughter Lucy playing in the garden, he marveled at how life had come full circle. Lucy, with her boundless energy and infectious laughter, was a living testament to the legacy that had begun with her mother, Lily. The torch had been passed, and Lucy was carrying it forward with the same spirit of love and service that had become the foundation of their family. Stephen saw in her the continuation of a journey that had started long before she was born. a journey of healing, reconciliation, and rediscovery. He felt a deep sense of gratitude for the life he now led, a life that, in his younger years, he could never have imagined. His days were no longer filled with the stress of boardrooms and business deals, but with the simple joys of family gatherings, community projects, and quiet moments of reflection. His mansion, once a cold and empty symbol of his success, had been sold long ago. He and Elena had chosen to settle in a modest but cozy home in the same neighborhood where it had all begun. A neighborhood that had flourished, in part, due to the community centers they had helped build. Those community centers had become more than just buildings. They were the heart of the neighborhood, places where people of all ages came together to learn, grow, and support one another. The work Stephen, Andrew, and Lily had done through their foundation had expanded far beyond their initial vision. They had not only revitalized their community but had inspired others to do the same in neighborhoods across the city. The foundation's reach now extended to numerous communities, offering educational programs, job training, health services, and more. The impact they had made was profound, and Stephen took pride in knowing that their work would continue to touch lives for generations to come. As he opened his eyes, Stephen's gaze fell upon Elena, his partner in life and love for the past 2 decades. She had been his anchor through all the changes, her unwavering support and wisdom guiding him when he felt lost. Their relationship had grown stronger with each passing year, deepened by the shared mission that had brought them together. Elena had been instrumental in the foundation's success, her compassion and strength inspiring everyone who worked with her. Stephen knew that he could not have done any of it without her by his side. "What are you thinking about, my love?" Elena's voice broke through his reverie, soft and full of understanding. Stephen smiled, his heart swelling with affection as he squeezed her hand. "I'm thinking about how much has changed, how incredibly fortunate I am." Elena returned his smile, her eyes reflecting the same love and contentment that filled his own heart. They both turned their attention to the garden, where their granddaughter Lucy was now leading the other children in a game of tag. The sight filled Stephen with a sense of peace he had rarely known in his earlier years. A peace that came from knowing that the life he had built was rich in all the ways that truly mattered. Suddenly, the sound of the front door opening drew their attention. Andrew emerged, carrying a tray of freshly made lemonade. His hair was streaked with gray, and the lines on his face spoke of a life well lived, but his smile was as warm as ever. "Kids," Andrew called out, his voice carrying over the garden. "Come get some lemonade." The children, including Lucy, ran to him with gleeful shouts of thanks. Watching them, Stephen felt an overwhelming sense of pride, not just in what they had accomplished, but in the bonds that had been rebuilt and the love that had grown between them. He remembered the early days of his reconciliation with Andrew, the tentative steps they had taken to rebuild their relationship, and how those steps had eventually led to a deep and enduring brotherhood. They had both changed, and their bond had only grown stronger with time. As Lucy approached the porch, her cheeks flushed from playing, she looked up at Stephen with her big, curious eyes. "Grandpa," she said with the earnestness only a child can muster, "can you tell me the story again of how you met Aunt Lily?" Stephen laughed, lifting his granddaughter onto his lap. "Again? But you've heard it 1,000 times." "But I love it," Lucy insisted, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. "Please, Grandpa." Stephen glanced at Elena and Andrew, who exchanged knowing smiles and nodded in encouragement. He began to recount the story that had changed the course of his life. The story of how a little girl's innocent question had led him back to his family, back to the people who mattered most. As he spoke, he felt a deep sense of connection, not just to his granddaughter, but to the entire journey that had brought him to this moment. "And so, little Lucy," Stephen concluded, his voice tinged with emotion, "I learned that true wealth isn't in money or the things we own, but in the people we love and the difference we can make in others' lives." Lucy wrapped her small arms around his neck, hugging him tightly. "I love you, Grandpa. When I grow up, I want to be like you and Grandma Elena, helping people." Stephen felt his heart swell with pride and a tear slip down his cheek. "And you will be, my little one. You have a huge heart, just like your mother." At that moment, Lily and her husband Michael arrived, greeting everyone with warm hugs and smiles. Lily, now a woman in her 40s, still carried the same bright smile that had charmed Stephen all those years ago. She had become a leader in the community, running the foundation with a passion and dedication that inspired everyone around her. Michael, a teacher by profession, had supported her every step of the way, and together they were raising Lucy with the same values of compassion, empathy, and service that had defined their lives. As Lily sat next to her uncle, she took his hand in hers, her eyes shining with gratitude and love. "Telling stories again, Uncle Stephen?" she asked with a teasing smile. "Your daughter is insatiable," Stephen replied with a laugh. "She reminds me of someone I met many years ago." Lily squeezed his hand, her smile softening. "I'll never stop thanking you for everything you've done for us, for this community. None of this would have been possible without you." Stephen shook his head, his voice filled with humility. "No, Lily, I'm the one who should thank you. You and your father showed me the way to a truly rich life. I only followed the path you both illuminated for me." As the family continued to chat and share stories, Stephen felt a profound sense of fulfillment. His life had been a journey, one that had taken him from the cold, empty halls of a mansion to the warm embrace of a loving family and a thriving community. The community centers they had built had grown into more than just places for education and support. They had become the beating heart of the neighborhoods, symbols of hope and resilience. The foundation, now led by Lily with Michael's help, continued to grow and evolve. They had expanded their programs to include financial literacy classes, mobile health clinics, and initiatives to bring green energy to underserved communities. Every project was a testament to their commitment to making a real and lasting difference in people's lives. And Andrew, though officially retired, remained a constant presence, his wisdom and experience guiding the foundation's efforts. Stephen looked around at the faces of his family, at the joy and love that filled the air, and he knew that he had found something far more valuable than any material wealth. The mansion, the bank accounts, the titles, none of it mattered compared to the richness of these moments, the legacy of love and service that they had created together. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of gold and pink, Stephen felt a sense of peace that he had never known in his younger years. His journey had not been easy, but it had been worth every step. He had found his true calling, not in the pursuit of wealth, but in the pursuit of a life well lived, a life dedicated to love, family, and the betterment of others. Elena, noticing the distant look in his eyes, gently touched his arm. "Are you okay, love?" Stephen turned to her, his eyes bright with unshed tears, and smiled. "More than okay, my love. I'm at peace. I'm complete." And as if to underscore the finality of that realization, a gentle breeze swept through the garden once more, carrying with it the scent of flowers and the echoes of children's laughter. Stephen closed his eyes, feeling the warmth of Elena's hand in his, and knew that this moment, this life, was the true wealth he had been searching for all along. It was a wealth that could not be quantified and could not be measured in any traditional sense. It was the wealth of the soul, the richness of a life filled with purpose, love, and the joy of giving. It was the kind of wealth that transcended time and space, leaving a legacy that would continue to touch lives long after he was gone. As night gently fell over the neighborhood, the Marshall family remained together on the porch, wrapped in the warmth of their love and the memories they had created. And Stephen, once a lonely millionaire lost in the pursuit of success, had found his way to a life far richer than anything he could have ever imagined. This was his happy ending, but it was also a new beginning, a beginning that would carry on in the hearts and lives of all those he had touched. And so, the story of Stephen Marshall, the man who discovered the true meaning of wealth, came to its close. But his legacy, the love, the compassion, the impact of his transformation, would live on, a beacon of hope and inspiration for generations to come. As we come to the end of this heartwarming journey, I'd like to take a moment to reflect on the powerful lessons that Stephen Marshall's story has taught us. Through his transformation, we've seen that true wealth isn't measured by money or success, but by the love we share, the relationships we build, and the difference we make in the lives of others. Now, I'd love to hear from you. What have you learned from Stephen's journey? What is the one thing you will bring into your own life to create a richer, more meaningful existence? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. We're eager to hear how this story has touched you. If you enjoyed this video, please leave your comment below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more inspiring stories and life lessons. Your support means the world to us, and we're excited to continue this journey of growth and discovery with you.